Today I just want to talk about different levels of energy, more predominantly the lower levels of energy that keep us down, right? So energy as in emotion or like state of being, that sort of idea. You could actually pick up a book called Levels of Energy by Frederick, Dodson, and it's actually a very fantastic book, and it's kind of an outside perspective and allows you to try to understand things from a different meaning and different layer, different hierarchy of different principles, right? So there's different order of how you might be feeling. Like, let's say the top one would be more along lines of like enlightenment, like pure happiness. Then somewhere in the middle you have things like desire or neutral satisfaction, that sort of thing. There's different meanings behind it, and I can dig deeper into that into the future videos and everything like that too. A few things that I did want to point out, since we've been on the topic of basically the lower things that have kept us down, especially as of late with everything that's been going on, are the lowest three that I feel are very detrimental to somebody's mental health in terms of a bad way, and things that can keep them down. Probably the three things that are most responsible for depression that isn't something that's clinical that you've had your whole life, something that's kind of been introduced to you over the years, whether or not, like, let's say abandonment issues, right? Abandonment issues are like so severe, and they're one of those things that are just kind of harder to target and harder to deal with or even talk about, right? First, I'd like to just segue into a couple of them that fit slightly above the bottom three. One being anger and two being apathy. So the thing is with anger, obviously it's connotated with a negative emotion, right? But usually when you're angry, your state is amped up a little bit, right? There's a little bit more excitement to you. It's just of the negative variety, right? Feeling that pain, you are feeling pain, of course, but it's more of an active pain, right? It's not like a defeated, like, oh my god, it's the end of the world, I'm fucked kind of pain. It's just like, oh, fuck that guy, he cut me off in traffic, or that guy's such a piece of shit, he shouldn't have done that to his girlfriend. Things like that. That will fit a little bit higher in the spectrum, actually a little bit even higher than apathy. So apathy will fit somewhere just below that. Apathy is basically you don't have that same active attention to it that's gravitated towards that word or that feeling. It's basically just like that I don't really give a shit, I don't care about anything kind of attitude, right? Kind of feeling, kind of state of being, that whole thing. I find that to be like a neutral negativity. Like, there's so many different, obviously varying degrees of apathy, but with the general public, when they talk about being apathetic, it's basically just like, I don't really care about anything, I just come with whatever goes and see where it takes me, right? Just not giving a shit about what's surrounding you and what's going on in your world. It's sort of like, yeah, everything's terrible, but I also don't really care. And there's something to be said about that not really caring. There's something to be said about that dissonance where you just don't really care, because it's like you're taken out of the equation, right? You're not putting as much effort in, right? And when you don't put as much effort into something, you're not really feeling the backlash from it, even if it's in a negative light, right? It's just kind of coming from a place like, oh, whatever. Oh, the world is dark, the world is bleak, who cares? I don't care about anything, blah, 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 right? Like some sort of sadistic emo meme. But not actually, not actually like that, obviously. But so apathy just tends to fit in a little bit higher than that. And so the bottom three that I want to talk about, we're finally getting to the point here across, is number one, guilt, number two, regret, and number three, shame. They do have a specific organized manner when it comes to the book and when it comes to how they're outlined and detailed. But for me, I'm just going to group them all together because I don't really want to pick one out and favor one over the other, as all three of them have one thing in common, and they all are directly linked to causes of trauma. That sort of trauma energy that we all kind of feel from time to time, and some people just feel it all the time, and that's what's causing the suicide rates to go up, and that's what's causing that elongated depression, that hole that you fucking sink so deep into that you're like, oh my god, I can't even climb out of this. This is just an everlasting pit, like, that I cannot escape from. Well, it's easy to say, hey, there's a light at the end of the tunnel. It's a lot harder to follow that guidance in getting there and finding the proper help and the proper tools for what you need in order to make yourself come alive. Reach out and get yourself above water there. Feeling regret is something that I find that as people go on and it lingers on, if they can't let go of something, any mistakes that they may have made, you know, like, oh my God, I wish I would have called that person before they passed away, or like, oh my God, I can't believe I told my mom that she was an asshole, or oh my God, I can't believe that I punched my brother like that. You know, there's just so many different examples that can fit into that category. But I find that with regret, a lot of people that are living with it, they kind of bring it to the forefront, and it kind of amplifies, you know. You ever find that, like, when it kind of goes on and on over the years, if you're still holding on to something, that regret tends to be a little bit deeper. But it's funny too, because our idea of that story that we had about ourselves and how we handled that back before kind of gets manipulated over the years. The more and more that you think about that specific thing, the more and more it kind of fits to the mold of you shitting on yourself, right? It may not have very well been as horrible as you have thought about it, like as you were in the moment, but you don't present it that way. You kind of like attack yourself with it, and then you get lost in that thought loop of negativity with that regret. You see this a lot too as you get older. Like, how I like to view it is, you see people that are, you know, let's say in their late 80s, early 90s, entering the retirement homes and establishing that new part of their life. And you can go and ask them, like, so many of them, I would say at least half of them, maybe not even a vast majority of them. I can't get all the numbers accurate to my degree, so don't hold me to it. But something that I've noticed is that, of course, they're holding so much fucking regret, right? Like, I wish that what I would have done is do this when I was 25, or I wish I would have flown across the globe and gone to this island and talked to that girl and made the moves that I wanted to make in my life to make it a sufficient living for me to be happy, you know? So many people have all kinds of different stories from all different walks of life. These stories represent a whole other story that illustrates the life that they should have lived or wish that they could have lived. And you find this to be like the number one piece of advice that they give to other people in order to thrive and not to just get by, right? Because a lot of people are just kind of stuck in their comfort zones and getting by. But is anyone really thriving, right? It takes a little bit to challenge yourself in order to thrive and truly be happy with the life that you're living. There's different things, obviously, that are going to come in the form of curveballs, hit you in the side of the face, knock you down and that sort of thing, and some more than others, right? But this just sort of exemplifies, you know, touching on when they say, hey, if there's one thing I can tell you, don't make this mistake. Don't do things that you're going to regret. Make use of your time. Be productive with what you're doing. Give yourself some drive, some purpose, you know. I would say that that's a piece of advice that could change a lot of people's lives, right? From a positive standpoint, but also from a negative standpoint, that level of regret is so down low on the chart that it's definitely something you have to tackle and learn how to let go at an earlier age. You know, the earlier the better, right? You don't want to sink any deeper, so you have to have a further way to crawl yourself back out. So after establishing that with the regret, moving on towards something like shame. With shame, it's just something that you could kind of give to yourself, or something that other people can give to you based on placing judgment upon you. People will shame you for all kinds of things that you're doing. You know, it even stems from being at a young age. Let's say you're at a restaurant, right? You're 5 years old, you're with your parents or whatever, and, you know, you don't know anything about life. Your imagination's running wild, and, you know, you're being really loud, right? Let's say your mom or dad is not in a good mood, and they tell you, hey, can you just pipe down over there for a bit? Like, can you just, like, shut your yap or whatever? Like, you know, maybe not 5, maybe a little bit older, you know, ruthless parents being that way, right? But the whole example I'm trying to make here with the shaming is people tend to take that from an early age and they kind of run with it, right? Once you've got this original idea of something in your head from a young age, you tend to stick with it, right? There's a book that's called The 4 Agreements, and it very much so touches on this as well, too, so I also recommend that. But when the kid is in that restaurant and they are getting a talking to from their parents, and their parents are, let's say, you know, they're just trying to have some peace and quiet, and they say something, right? it might not seem as monumental to someone like them and to anyone from the outside looking in, but to that child, they've now established in their brain that, oh my God, okay, that means no. That means I cannot be loud at all, right? And some kids will take that accordingly and understand, like, oh, okay, that's great. This guidance has helped me understand that I can't be too loud over here because it disrupts other people when they're eating their meal, and this is the respectful thing to do, right? But in the other facet of it is you don't understand necessarily how that kid would handle it. Some kids will take that into such a deeper level where they're like, oh my God, I am disrupting people. I'm a terrible person. You know, this is what it actually translates into from a young age. This is how important really good parenting is. This is why it's so vital, because some kids need a little bit more of that nutrition, right? That informative nutrition that's going to help them grow and get them to become a better version of them. It all stems from a young age. So being shamed like that, in terms of like, you know, that's more of like a critical shaming, like where you're going through the learning curve of the process. Something like that can be very important. But if you're not aware, having that awareness, very key, very important, of how you're teaching your child or how that child is learning, then it kind of all gets lost. So based on that example, it could stem obviously from a younger age, but if somebody is shaming you, or you are beating yourself up, all that's going to do is create that tunnel and dig yourself a little bit deeper. That level of shame, you just kind of get, I don't know if you felt this way before, but whenever I feel shame for like, oh my God, you shouldn't have done that. Why did you do that? You know, and especially when there's a multitude of people kind of surrounding you or, you know, verbally harassing you in that way to tell you, hey, what you did, you fucked up. What you did is wrong there. And, there's like this wave of negativity where it's like your shoulders sink, the heart sinks in the chest, and all of a sudden you're just kind of drooping to the ground, right? I find that too much of this shame, what it does is it drives people under. It puts them in a little bit of a hole where they're just kind of stuck at home and they just don't want to do anything with their lives. If it's bad enough, right? If it's bad enough, it'll just like crawl you up in a ball and force you into that tunnel. And you're just sitting there like scratching your head like, oh my God, anything that I do, I'm walking on eggshells, something I'm doing is going to be wrong, you know, in a most extreme example. But like, yeah, like being shit on for things, and of course, a very important thing I want to illustrate here is like the shame that you give yourself. Like, oh, you're a fucking idiot. You shouldn't have left the milk out like last night. You know, like honestly, something very small like that could be a fucking large triggering issue for that person, and you just don't know where they're coming from, right? It could be an integral part of their human makeup as they've been growing up. You don't know that's where that might be stemming from. So it's important to not take this lightly and to understand that there are different angles on that. So that whole idea of everything kind of being shoved down your throat and in your face is honestly put to the forefront by how you treat yourself, right? Eventually, what will happen in the most negative way is you will adopt that thought pattern and process, and if it happens so much to the point where you feel like everything you're doing is wrong, you will ingrain that in your head and you will kind of turn it and it'll spin into a vicious cycle. So that's another thing you don't want to have get out of control. So that's why I would put that way lower on the list as it kind of is in the book there. And then the third one, of course, is guilt. Guilt stems from all kinds of different things. Like you feel guilty for things that you might not have done, right? But just by the process. A very good example of this is seen in people, people losing loved ones, right? There's something called survivor's guilt. Survivor's guilt is something where people feel guilty for somebody passing away before them, or somebody passing away thinking that, oh my God, I wish it was me. You know, you see this a lot with like brothers and sisters and whatnot, you know, where they have such a close bond and then they lose that loved one and they feel like, I'm the one who was the fuck up. I'm the one who had this going on for me. I should have looked out for them better. I shoulda, coulda, shoulda, woulda, right? You know, that you could play this transition in your head, but at the end of the day, that is something that can fucking absolutely keep you down into a pit of depression, right? And these are all areas of trauma, and some people have all three of these areas of trauma hitting them left, right, and center all at once, you know? So keep the perspective out there, and it's true what they say, just like you never know what someone is going through. Of course, like even yourself, right? You're going to have a bad day as well too, but some people have a very bad life, right? So it's good to keep that open mind and that open view for that point of view or perspective. But with the guilt, especially when it's combined with that shame, where you're getting that that shame and you're being shit on, because it's kind of tied in. They're like I said, all three have this vicious tie-in together, right? And they have their own distinct identity among each one, but it kind of all resonates in that same vicious circle, that loop. The guilt is kind of like, oh my God, why did I do that to that person? Why? And it's usually a little bit of an over-exaggeration, like I was saying earlier, where we tend to have our own narration and we tend to skew it in our own way, where it's like we feel guilty for something that we have done that may have hurt somebody else, even though we were just going about it our own way, right? Sometimes you're going to step on other people's toes if you're doing what is best for you and what you love. And there are times when it's a complete dilemma and there's nothing you can do about it other than choose that or otherwise. And some people just feel like they're being too selfish, right? I feel this more commonly with the more empathetic type of people. I am definitely in that same vein of empathetic person. Other people might think differently, but that's how kind of I consider myself. But they will take this to heart. They will think about this every hour of every day. Every fiber of their being will be so displaced and focused from that pit of depression on that guilt and why they feel like, you know what, I was the one who fucked up. I was the one who's responsible for this. And most of the time, it's a detachment, It's a detachment from the positive side, to the attachment of, oh my God, I am the reason why this person feels this way, or I am the reason why this thing happened to them. And it's just not the case. It's most of the time it is not the case. And when you're feeling that way, it's important to nip it in the bud quicker rather than address that issue, eliminate that from your circle of habits that you've got going on in your life, and just put that, and just try to put that to bed. Because the longer that you hold on to that guilt of, I should have done this and I should have done that, the more it's going to bury you under. And the more that guilt harbors that regret, and then that regret will cause you to shame yourself even more. And I think it's important to look at the deeper side of all three of these things that cause this trauma energy and that gives all of this negative reallocation to people's minds. It's an endless thought loop. It's very, very vicious as a cycle, and it's something that we just need to first and foremost talk about. Not on the surface level, be yourself bullshit kind of level, like of this, oh my God, if you're sad, talk to me, or what's wrong. We need to become our own personal psychologist for ourselves, and in doing so, and being able to remedy ourselves as best as we can to the best of our knowledge and ability, we can extend that arm, that olive branch, to try and help other people around us in a proper way. Not just giving blind advice and not just taking things just strictly from the surface level, but just diving deeper into the endless meaning that is our lives and the purpose that we have, the purpose that we should have, right? And the purpose that those people have, the ones that we love that don't care anymore, the ones that we love that have so much trauma that they can't even be angry about it. They have to advert to having all of that regret, all of that angst and shame and total guilt, as if they feel like they don't deserve to be here anymore. This person deserves to live, but I don't, right? And then when you start getting that low into the cycle, like the lowest of the low, like most people have not felt this way low, right? That is where you kind of dive in deeper to the spectrum of suicide. And that's a very, very dark and deep topic, but it's one that we can't shy away from. And when we do talk about it, it has to be from an absolute deeper layer where we're talking about it with full meaning and full care. But that's something that is better to be touched on solely on its own. This is just me throwing these words and ideas out there. So in case there are people who can relate with this, just in knowing that, hey, you're not alone with this, and hey, there is deeper meaning to this. It's not just what everybody tells me, and oh no, nothing worked. The therapist I saw didn't do anything. The shows that I watched didn't help me. Oh my God, I'm a fuck up. I deserve to die, right? This is just here throwing another branch out there to say, hey, you know what? No, you have no idea how much people are going through, and there are people in this world that are going through things similar to you, or, you know, not as worse or a little bit worse, or in that vein or category. It's very important to associate this together and in understanding one another, right? Because once we talk deeper and we talk more long form like this rather than that short form, hi, how's it going, small talk business, the more connection we are going to have, and the more connection that we have, the easier it is for us to breed that happiness among one another and to come together overall. The unity is way more important than the division. The unity is way more important than the division. So if anyone is having a hard time in handling these things or pinpointing what it might be, just take a good look at those 3 examples. Maybe pick up the book Levels of Energy by Frederick Dodson, and the 4 Agreements. I can't think about the author of the 4 Agreements right now. God, just off the top of my head, I just couldn't get it. Those are just like kind of, this is very loose, by the way. I didn't really go all out on that. It's been a little while since I've read those books. But I just popped in my head today, and I just think it's of absolute significance that we further discuss this and not shy away from it, and not just dive into what's convenient for us and what's quick, because we live in a day and age where we need everything now. The convenience is everything, you know, like, oh my God, my time. But it's funny when we always talk about, oh my God, it's on my time, it's on my watch, you know, this is important to me. You know, we oftentimes, because we are rushing through that process of the importance of our time that we hold, we are adversely ignoring the important things, like how other people might be feeling that are close to us. We might not have any more of that awareness. So we can't be sitting here depleting our awareness, but instead creating more awareness, whether it's for yourself, your inner self, or your outer awareness to what's going on around you. And this will significantly help the situation that you might be going through, and significantly help others going through a same thing that you might not even be aware of. So just kind of keep an open mind to that. And maybe these principles will touch on a deeper level that is of strong resonance with you. If there's something going on and you need that deeper level, that deeper understanding, there's always going to be someone that's going to understand, even if it's a little bit, takes a little harder to look. You know, life is hard, but we all have our challenges. And if we can just latch on to the reasoning as to why, you know, if we can find the why as to why we're feeling the way we're feeling and why these things are happening to us, it may then be a lot easier for us to even ask for that help, or for us to understand that this person needs that help, even though at first glance you might not be even aware that they need help in the first place. You know, the more that we grow ourselves, the more that we'll have that fuller understanding, and a lot of people will be able to come together. I think progress is important. Progress is not perfect, but that's why they call it progress, because you keep going. You just got to make sure it's in that uphill direction. So with that, we will touch on this a little bit later in the future, and whatever helps. And I hope you stay real, and I'll stay caveman.